الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وعلينا معهم وفيهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. We intend learning and teaching, remembering and reminding, giving and receiving benefit and gain, encouraging adherence to Allah's book and the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam, inviting to guidance and leading to goodness, seeking therein Allah's countenance, pleasure, nearness and reward, transcendent and exalted is He. We intend what the author intended, as well as our shaykhs and the pious, and what Allah knows of virtuous intentions. So continuing this lesson in the Fiqh of Ibadat, the sacred law of acts of worship, in this book, Matan Abi Shuja', we've reached the chapter on Wudu, which is the first of the aims or objectives of purification, insha'Allah ta'ala. And the author said, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Faslun Furudul Wudu'i Sittatu Ashya' An-Niyatu 'inda Ghasl al-Wajhi wa Ghasl al-Wajhi wa Ghasl al-Yadaini ila al-Mirfaqain wa Mashu ba'd al-Ratsi wa Ghasl al-Rijlaini ila al-Ka'bain wa Tartib ala ma dhakarnah. He'll mention the Sunan as well, though we will cover that next week, insha'Allah ta'ala. So last week we discussed the siwak as well as vessels. So what is the ruling of gold and silver dishes? What is their ruling? They are not permissible. Is it permissible to own them, to buy them, if you don't use them? No, that's right. They're neither permissible to use nor are they permissible to acquire. If they are in one's acquisition, one has to do away with them and actually melt them and have them reformed into something else. La ilaha illallah. And the reason for that is the Prophet ﷺ's prohibition of drinking from and eating from dishes made of gold and silver, and he said they are for them in this world and for us in the hereafter, meaning for the disbelievers in the hereafter. What is the ruling of siwak? What is the ruling of siwak? Yeah, that it's praiseworthy in every time and circumstance except after the zawal, which is effectively the dhuhr time for someone who is fasting. And when is it particularly praiseworthy?
When the milk becomes stale, and after waking up.
Yeah, there's times when it's particularly praiseworthy. Among them are when awakening from sleep, as well as going to sleep, and when praying, or when there's any change in one's mouth. And there are other times as well. And the siwak is purifying to one's mouth and pleasing to the Lord subhanahu, as Al-Bukhari narrated ta'liqa. So the translation of this section that we will cover today is Ablution, obligatory actions. 6 actions are obligatory. Intention, just as one begins to wash the face, washing the hands up to and including the elbows, wiping a portion of the head, washing the feet up to and including the ankles, and doing the above in the order they were mentioned. So there are 6 integrals of wudu. So this author here, he says, La ilaha illallah, 6 actions. The translator says 6 actions are obligatory, and our author said furudul wudu'i sitta. There are 6 obligations of wudu. So here, obligation means pillar. So you could also say the pillars of wudu are 6, and a pillar, we also translate it and will from this point on tend to translate it as an integral, and that is an obligatory integral, and it is an essential part of any given act. So the 6 essential parts of wudu are these. And we'll mention 13 or 17 essential parts of prayer, and a few essential parts of fasting, and 2 essentials of ghusl. So in any given work, we have to know these essential elements, these integrals, and with those, as well as the conditions, the work is valid. Otherwise, it's invalid, which means it has to be made up. So if we were to do it in front of a jurist, a faqih, he would say, your wudu is sound, and you can pray with that wudu, and you don't have to make up your prayer. Whereas if these integrals were not present, and he were watching us make wudu and then pray, he'd say you have to go back and make your prayer, because wudu is a condition for prayer, and your wudu was invalid, and thus your prayer is not valid. So it's really important, and it behooves us to know these, and they are quite simple. In summary, 6: intention, washing one's face, washing one's hands from the fingertips to the elbows, wiping a part of the head, and washing the feet to the ankles, and including, as was the elbows, up to and including, and doing it in that order. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Naam. So these are the 6 integrals of wudu, the 6 essential elements of wudu that make it up, and with such that if one is missing, it is not valid. The first is an-niyyah. An-niyyah inda ghasl al-wajh. So niyyah, enough cannot be said for niyyah. And niyyah has a couple of ways it's used. One is al-gharad al-hamil ala shay, the thing that motivates you to do something. And when it is good, it's better than the action. And when it is bad, it's worse than the action. So for this reason, the Prophet ﷺ taught us that the action of a believer, the intention of a believer is better than his or her actions. So intending to do something for Allah's countenance, subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's the meaning of the intention, that the motivation for that is to please Allah. And in terms of the law, what we mean, what the scholars of sacred law mean, as understood by the Shafi'i Imams, is that intention is an aim to do something performing with its, coinciding with its performance. An aim to do something coinciding with its performance. So that's its definition in sacred law. So intention means that when you are beginning an action, that's your aim, is to perform that action. And you have to call that aim to mind. So the intention, there's 7 points or 7 rulings that we're going to mention about the intention, and these details will apply to all of the other chapters that we'll study, or many of the other chapters that we study in this Monday night lesson, in the chapter of Ibadat. So these are 7 rulings of the intention, and they are mentioned in one line of poetry, which 3 of you at least should memorize, which is حقيقة حكم محل وزمن كيفية شرط ومقصود حسن. حقيقة حكم محل وزمن كيفية شرط ومقصود حسن. So the first of these 7 rulings or 7 points about the intention is its definition. What is it? What is the definition of intention? Intention linguistically means an aim or an objective. So someone might say, they might have said a few months ago, I intend to go on Hajj. Or someone might say, I intend to go 40 days in the path of Allah. That is an intention in language. However, in sacred law, it has a more specific definition, which is what we stated. It is an aim to do something coinciding with its performance. So coinciding with its performance is key here. So right now, I can't say that I have a intention as meant by sacred law to perform ablution, because I'm not performing ablution. So if I said I'm intending to perform ablution, and then I walked into the place where we make wudu and began to wash my face, that intention that I made here is linguistically an intention, but in the definition of sacred law it's not, because it didn't coincide with its performance. So my intention to perform ablution has to coincide with, as the author said, washing the first portion of the face. So that is its definition. An aim to do something coinciding with its performance. Its ruling is the second point. The ruling of intention is that it is typically obligatory. Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are only through intentions. Imam al-Shafi said that hadith applies to 70 chapters of fiqh, of law. So wudu it applies, ghusl it applies, prayer it applies, zakat it applies, fasting, hajj, all kinds of works. We have to have, it's an obligation that we have an intention. Some works don't need an intention. Removing filth doesn't need an intention, for instance, and that's one of the subjects we'll study. Haqiqatun hukmun mahallun. The third point or ruling is the place of the intention. Where is the place of the intention? The place of the intention is the heart. And pronouncing it is sunnah. Pronouncing it is sunnah. So, if someone says they're making wudu, and as they wash their face, they say, I intend an obligatory ghusl. And they said that, their tongue got away from them, but what they meant was wudu. Just like I might call my daughter and say, Nafisa, come here, and I mean Khadija. And I know that I mean Khadija, but my tongue got away from me. It didn't state my real intention. So the place of the intention is the heart, though speaking it is on the tongue is sunnah, though if you misspoke and you knew what you intended, then it doesn't harm. And similarly, if you spoke other than what you intended, that doesn't count either. What counts is what is in your heart. So the place of the intention is the heart. Speaking it is sunnah, it's recommended, such that the tongue aids the heart. So the tongue aids the heart to recall and focus on that which it is doing. And the Prophet ﷺ spoke his intention in two circumstances. When he made hajj, he spoke his hajj, the intention of his hajj, when he said his talbiyah. And also, he would ask his family if there was any food, and they might say no, and he would say, Inni sa'im, indeed I am fasting. So those are two circumstances in which he spoke his intention. And by analogy, which is one of the places, one of the means to which we derive rulings in sacred law, the Shafi'i Imams applied it to other chapters other than Hajj and fasting, such as this, which we will study in a moment. Wudu. Haqiqatun hukmun mahallan wa zaman. The fourth point related to intention is its time. Its time. And that is typically at the beginning of acts of worship. Typically at the beginning of acts of worship. So there's an exception, a few exceptions. We'll see an exception in fasting, and we'll see an exception in zakat. La ilaha illallah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa tabi'ina lahum bi ihsan ila yawm al-din wa alayna ma'ahum wa fihim bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. We intend learning and teaching, remembering and reminding, giving and receiving benefit and gain encouraging adherence to Allah's book and the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sahbihi wasallam, inviting to guidance and leading to goodness, seeking therein Allah's countenance, pleasure, nearness and reward, transcendent and exalted is He. We intend what the author intended is the ruling of gold and silver dishes. What is their ruling? They are not permissible. Is it permissible to own them, to buy them, if you don't use them? No, that's right. They're neither permissible to use nor are they permissible to acquire. If they are in one's acquisition, one has to, as well as our shaykhs and the pious and what Allah knows of virtuous intentions. So continuing this lesson in the Fiqh of Ibadat, the sacred law of acts of worship, in this book, Matan Abi Shuja', we've reached the chapter on Wudu, which is the first of the aims or objectives of purification, insha'Allah ta'ala. And the author said, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Faslun furudul wudu'i sittatu ashya' an-niyatu 'inda ghasl al-wajhi wa ghasl al-wajhi wa ghasl al-yadayni ila al-mirfaqayn wa mashu ba'd al-ratsi wa ghasl al-rijlayni ila al-ka'bayn wa at-tartib 'ala ma dhakarnah. He'll mention the Sunan as well, though we will cover that next week, insha'Allah ta'ala. So last week we discussed the siwak as well as vessels. So what if you do away with them and actually melt them and have them reformed into something else? La ilaha illallah. And the reason for that is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibition of drinking from and eating from dishes made of gold and silver, and he said they are for them in this world and for us in the hereafter, meaning for the disbelievers in the hereafter. What is the ruling of siwak? What is the ruling of siwak?